and spend time with everybody. So what we're going to do today for our closing plenary is really tie it together with where we started on Monday morning. On Monday morning, we talked about developing new rights-of-way, why they're so important, what the challenges are, what good looks like, and how do we make good happen. Today, we've got two wonderful and deeply experienced people that are going to share some perspectives of where are we going next. And really our intent with setting it up this way is to leave you with some fodder for and inspiration for continued thinking as you're sitting at the airport or driving or heading home about how you're going to use the knowledge that you've gained over the last several days and how you're going to turn that into action and continue to drive our practice forward, because it's a really special time right now. So I'm going to introduce our two speakers, and the way that we're formatting this today is we'll have Kathy Hope from Duke Energy give us a presentation and some thoughts and reflections, really drawing on the last few days, as well as her deep 40-year experience in the industry. She must have started when she was 6. And then Amy Huber is going to join her for a fireside chat Q&A. They've pre-prepared a few questions to get them started into the Q&A, but we really, similar to the starting session, we want you all to participate. In the Q&A, we'll have Slido running again, and I'll put up the QR code for that. So with the Slido tool, you just use your phone, you scan the QR code, and it'll take you to a website where you can enter the questions. And then you can upvote those questions that you see that it's like, yeah, we really want them to talk about this, so that when there's lots of questions, they'll have an easy time picking. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kathy and Amy. So Kathy, if you want to come on up. Kathy Hope is approaching 40 years of experience in the electric utility industry, first as an assistant engineer in the nuclear generation department at Duke Power. The first 13 years of her career were focused on the generation side of Duke's business, including plant electrical design, equipment replacement, and project management of transmission switchyard maintenance and capital improvements. In 1995, she moved to the transmission department, focusing on project management of substation lines and projects, supply chain materials, and contract management. With the Duke Synergy merger, she was named Director of Program Management for the substation lines programs and asset protection, removing encroachments from rights-of-way. During that time, she also led multiple teams focused on improving compliance processes for NERC standards. Kathy's official public engagement and environmental leadership experience began when she became Director of Transmission Vegetation across Duke Energy Transmission's 6-state footprint. She is currently General Manager of the Siting, Permitting, and Engagement for Electrical Transmission Capital Projects in 6 states. Kathy holds a BS degree in electrical engineering from Clemson University, an MBA from Queen's University in Charlotte, and she's a project management professional. One of her memorable career moments was being part of the vegetation and aviation team that won Duke Energy's highest employee recognition award in 2017, the James B. Duke Award, for an innovative solution for adding audible alarms to Duke's patrol helicopters to signal transmission line crossings. That's really cool. Kathy has a passion for golf with a goal to play at least one course in each of the 50 states. Kathy, we've got to get you to Canada too. She enjoys traveling, experiencing local restaurants, having fun and interesting adventures. She loves her golden doodle, Hershey, who has been very vocal on Teams meetings during the pandemic, and she's thrilled to be invited to speak as part of this workshop. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm really excited to introduce my dear friend Amy Huber. She's a project director and a client relationship manager for Jacobs Engineering with over 25 years of experience in private industry and senior level leadership in the energy sector. She has a BS in biology, and she minored in conservation and environmental management. And then she has a master's in business and administration. She's worked in the construction industry for 10 years on heavy civil and environmental projects, 7 years with a Midwest utility, and 9 years in the consulting industry, specifically providing project and client solutions for power generation and transmission projects. She's a strategic visionary. She's passionate about distilling core business needs, regulatory compliance, and market drivers into innovative client solutions.
You're so smart.
In her free time, you can find her walking, hiking in the gym, or on the golf course or basketball gym supporting her son. Welcome, Amy. Well, it gives me great pleasure to hand the clicker over to Kathy for her address.
I don't know, I like that chair. It was real comfortable. How do I go back?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that was, you just stole my thunder seeing that next slide. But anyway, first of all, I am Kathy Hope. I've been, actually August the 2nd was my 40th year at Duke Energy, and I think I was younger than 6 years old when I actually started. But first of all, I want to tell you what's been going on this week. If you happen to have seen an attractive young woman with a name tag that says Catherine Hope, I'm the real Kathy Hope. I am not blonde, and I'm okay looking. But I just want to say that I appreciate Aaron and the rest of my team because I could not go to all of the sessions. And this whole closing is supposed to be what the conference was about. So they really helped me by going to those and then giving me some feedback. I did go to a few, and then, of course, you'll hear a little bit about that. So as I was introduced, I lead this incredible group of people, and some of them aren't here today, that do substation siting, transmission line, and everything I say about transmission days around electric, because we don't do gas transmission in my group. So, but they do siting of substations, transmission lines, environmental permitting, and public engagement across capital projects for our transmission department. The team that I led prior to this was also in my intro, and it was the vegetation management team, along with our asset protection group. And of course, as everybody knows, they're responsible for maintaining our right-of-ways and also protecting our easement rights. So some of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to bring about a perspective on both of those groups and why I really enjoyed the conference as much as I did. So the other disclaimer I need to tell you is that I've been at Duke for 40 years. It's the only company I've ever worked for besides a dime store when I was in high school. So I've got a very biased perspective sometimes from just Duke Power, Duke Energy, and all our mergers. But I've been to a lot of conferences. I've talked to a lot of people. You'll hear a little bit about that too. And so I'm not going to say that I'm an industry expert, but I've been around a long time to see a lot of changes in the industry. So here are my disclaimers. I am not an expert in the industry. I am not an expert in siting and routing or permitting or public engagement, and definitely not in vegetation. So you're probably wondering, why in the world am I here? And that's my slide. and the reason I'm here is because my buddies, Carmen and Amy, asked me to be here. And I think it was a voluntold kind of situation. She did tell me, excuse me, she wanted me to be the 8 o'clock. And of course, everybody's going to be kind of hungover, and nobody's going to show up at 8 o'clock. So she put me at last on the agenda. But anyway, I just want to let you know that what you're going to hear today is my perspective, living and breathing at Duke, growing up at Duke, and the things that I've been through. So Harry Sedaris did a really good job of walking us through past, present, and future at Duke Energy. So I started at Duke Energy in the 80s. And what I'm going to do with this slide is I'm pretty going to just talk about my career. So in the 80s, when I came to Duke, it was an exciting time. First of all, it was great to have a job as a poor student. But I had this incredible engineering job in generation. We were finishing up Catawba and McGuire. We were building Bad Creek. We were designing and building a 16-unit combustion turbine station, Lincoln. So it was an incredible time. There was a lot of teamwork. There was a lot of people helping each other out. It was just an amazing time. So it was fun to be here. And the other thing I noticed, and remember, I'm in this little silo over in Generation. Generation was getting all the money. They were getting all the money that I saw. They were getting the resources. They were getting the money, particularly around nuclear. So that was in the 80s. Randy talked about late in the 80s on Monday of when we had 5 transmission lines stopped. And then in 1991, North Carolina State Assembly created a statute around siting transmission lines. So that moved us into the 90s. The other thing that was going on in the 90s was around deregulation. That was the big work then. We were going to deregulate. We were going to change from integrated vertical utility to the gen and transmission and distribution. You know, gen and wires. That's what it was in the 90s. You know, and then we moved into, and we tried to do that. Some got deregulated. North and South Carolina stayed the same. Then we moved on into the 2000s. And I moved on. I started transmission in 1995. I made my jump from generation into transmission, moved into the 2000s as a project manager. Scope, schedule, cost, that's what we always did. And the value system for Duke didn't change. We were still focused on safety, environmental, and our customers. So that's what the 2000s looked like. Then in 2012, my life and my career path changed. I was asked to lead the vegetation management team. I'm serious, it literally changed my perspective on all kinds of things. In particular, it changed my perspective on how we maintain right-of-ways and the impact we have on our property owners and our customers. Never thought that. I mean, I lived in a plant. You know, you never really think about that until you actually get out there and have to work with people that are complaining or have to, you know, cut trees down that people have planted for their relatives. You know, we've been through everything like that, and they taught me, that team and the work taught me quite a bit. And it prepared me for my next job, which was the siting, permitting, and engagement. Hold on just a second. Because when you start looking at siting, permitting, engagement, you have to take it even further than that. You have to look at our stakeholders versus, versus regular property owners and customers. So you're wondering, okay, Kathy, you've been through 3 slides, and you're telling me all about yourself, so how in the world does this have to do with this conference this week? So let me tell you what it has to do with that, is I want to give you some context, because I learned so much from just talking to people. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but conferences like these are very important. And they change people's perspectives. They change decisions. They don't change values. But I needed to give you some of that context because now I'm going to talk about stakeholder engagement. Or maybe I've already done that. So what we did with stakeholder engagement, I told you we were looking at what we did when I was in vegetation, and now we're moving into permitting, siting, permitting, and engagement. So the big things that I've learned and what we've done is learn about relationships. And I went to one of the panels the other day, or one of the sessions the other day, and it was with GTC, and they were talking about how they formed relationships with their regulatory agencies in order to create this programmatic agreement on cultural impacts. And I thought that was amazing. I thought they did an incredible job, and it was out-of-the-box thinking. And I think it's a win-win. And, you know, that's what we're trying to get by coming to conferences like this. We're trying to find that win-win. So this is where we've come. This is where we started with engagement years ago. We have the right to do this. Therefore, we're going to do it. So what we do now is we have the right to do it, but we want to do the right thing. And the one thing we want to do is we want to communicate that message. I keep touching my mic. I want to communicate that message, and we want to get that message across to our stakeholders. And then in the future, what you're going to find is our stakeholders want even more decision-making rights. They want to hear more about us being transparent in how we select transmission site or substation sites and transmission lines. So you'll see that going forward. The one thing we have to do internally, though, is we have got to do a better job of explaining to our executives the risks associated with stakeholder engagement or the risks of not doing it correctly. So let's talk about the challenges of siting and routing. We've had 2 days of people talking about the challenges. So I'm just going to tell you the challenges that I see in our particular group at Duke Energy. Over the last 20 years, we have this mature process. And that by no means means that we don't learn different things and we don't try to improve, but it's pretty mature. But what we're rolling out in the next, and this is the challenge, what we're rolling out in the next couple of months is how are we going to operationalize environmental justice. Duke just started with their principles about a year or so ago, and our EH&S department is now rolling that across the corporation. We're going to be rolling it across each business unit. Transmission is it's a huge impact for us just because we are now going to be documenting what we do. Some of it we already do. You know, we already look at the environmental impacts. We look at the social impacts, ecological and cultural. We do that and we document that, but we don't do it with an EJ type screen. We've got a stakeholder engagement group, or public engagement group, and they do communication plans. We need to do a more robust communication plan so that we can help our stakeholders understand what we're doing and trust what we're doing. So the other challenge that we have is, and actually Kelly and I were talking about this last night, balancing what we share. You know, the public wants us to be transparent. Our regulators wants us to be transparent. But, you know, we have to balance the maps that we show. We have to balance the data that's shared internally and externally. And I'll give you an example of what's kind of bit us in the tail, is eminent domain laws are a little different in each state, and we've got basically 6 states that we work in. And we typically put out a project website for our high-risk projects. And that website will show the study area, it'll show our alternate routes, it'll give them as much information as they want. Well, attorneys have found out that we're being very transparent, so as soon as we publish that project website, certain attorneys are going on there and they're making a business of getting ahead of us to our property owners and just scaring the devil out of them, going, you're not going to get enough money for this and that kind of the other. So, you know, we have to balance some of that because we want to have a really good, honest discussion, but we also don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot too. So that's a huge challenge for us, and we're working through that. This is also where we talk about trust, and I think we coined the trust triangle the other day, is that for us, there is a triangle, is that the public, and this goes back, I don't know if David's here, this goes back to one of the discussions at the very first panel around regulators. You know, everybody has a different opinion. Do you regulate a lot prescriptively, or do you not regulate a lot? And I will tell you, it's a balance, and I think that's the challenge, is finding that sweet spot. Is the public wants the regulators to trust the regulators to oversee and make sure we do that. Any utility, Duke, let's just use Duke, we do our jobs correctly, and we have our corporate responsibility to do the right thing. You know, keep costs down, but also minimize our impacts on our lines and our substations. But then we have to trust the public, and the public has to trust us. So it's like this vicious little circle that we all have to get into, and that directly goes to the relationship building that we've been talking about pretty much in every session that I've been in. It's all about building relationships. It's all about communicating and not assuming that you know what the other person wants or the other community wants. Go talk to them. Go have people in those communities that will have a voice. And these are not just underserved communities. We need to have special focus on that, but we need to do this with all of our communities. Because only people in transmission think that transmission lines are beautiful. So the other thing is success. We talked, Carmen said something about success. Success is really hard to quantify. It's hard to get a metric around success, and I think that's the challenge. At least for me, that's a challenge. And so what is good when it comes to a line route? So at Duke, at Duke Transmission, we have what's called a site and acquire process, and then we have a design and build process, because we have to get the funding a little differently. So a successful site and acquire process for me, a project, is going to be, we have very little pushback or difficulty when we're working with our stakeholders and when we're doing the acquisition. Very little. That's very successful. But the problem is it's still the entire project, is that we still got to design and build it. And honestly, that's when a lot of the problems start, is people kind of forget about it unless we start right away. And then they start not complaining, but being concerned about what's going on in their communities or something like that. So how do you define success? So I think that's a big challenge for the industry, is how do you define success when it comes to public engagement? How do you define success when it comes to a line route and then building a line? For us, for a project manager, y'all know it's basically cost, schedule, hitting your dates, making sure you do that. But I've had so many projects that I would say were not successful because, yeah, we got it built, but we had all kind of issues we had to deal with after that. And then our poor maintenance people that have to go in after that and maintain the right-of-ways, they're having to deal with the repercussions if we didn't do it the right way. The last thing that we internally have a challenge with is the cost of engagement. And I haven't heard that actually talked about yet, but it's huge for us, is because at Duke, we're very focused on our customers. And for us in transmission, of course, that includes property owners. We're focused on the cost and the cost of our delivery. We really are, that's a focus for us, but cost isn't everything. Everything can't be low cost. So when you have a $200 million project and it's high risk, how much should you spend on engagement? I don't know. I haven't seen any rules of thumb because we haven't been doing it that long. And so that's one of the things we're working on, is trying to figure out a metric. Because if I've got a $250 million project and I'm spending $1 million on engagement, that didn't seem bad to me. But to a project manager that's never seen that kind of budget request for an engagement group, they're like, wait a minute, what are we doing for $1 million? And what I don't know that we've done a good job communicating up to our executives is the cost of engagement. If we are really going to do what we say we're going to do, engage with our stakeholders early, and we're going to go talk to people, talk to communities, talk to regulators, that costs money. It just costs money, and we just don't know how much that's going to cost right now, and how do you justify that? So that's probably one of the biggest things we deal with right now from a stakeholder engagement, is making sure we can kind of prove a negative. If you have a great project, you don't get a lot of pushback, but you spend $1 million, they're like, well, you spent way too much. You spend $1 million, you get a lot of pushback, they're like, why didn't you do any engagement? So you're kind of, it's a catch-22. I don't hit it hard enough. Okay, so this is around benchmarking. And I have a little bit different twist on benchmarking, and maybe it's because I came from the nuclear industry, is we used to benchmark everybody, and it was very formal. And I remember early in transmission, we would do these formal benchmarking types of things where we fill out this survey and you get the information back and you're trying to figure out, are you looking at apples and apples or what they're looking at, because it was all about what's our costs and how are you doing things, what are our organizations. Well, I'm gonna give you a whole different perspective. I don't know how much that formal benchmarking really helps. At least it hadn't helped me a whole lot. I like the benchmarking that I'm used to, which is what we're doing at a conference. Is the good example I can give you is 6 years ago, we started an engagement group. And Randy was with me, and we started that group. And then the first thing we did is when we got a leader of that group, we started benchmarking. We went and talked to Eversource, we went and talked to TVA, we went and talked to AEP, Dominion, we talked to all kind of companies, not just utilities, we talked to gas companies. What does your engagement look like? Because we didn't know how to organize. And so we learned from them, and we learned what worked and what didn't work. We learned how to organize. And so today, if you go and talk at Duke Energy, the transmission public engagement group is a role model. They're best in class in our company for stakeholder engagement. And I'm really proud of that, but it came from what I call, it was structured benchmarking, but not the formal kind of benchmarking. So I think benchmarking is really important. I think what you guys are doing now, we call it networking, it's the same thing. If we miss out on an opportunity to talk to somebody and compare what that person does to what I do and vice versa and get them in a group, then we've lost a huge chance to benchmark against other people in the industry that go through different things. And so these are my closing remarks. I know y'all are glad it's almost over. So, so we're going to do questions in a minute, but I want to talk a little bit about what I see in the future. Now, I'm going to tell you, we get summer interns, we get co-ops. I take them to lunch, we chat. Everybody coming out of school or in school right now, it's all about renewables. That's the glamorous life. It's all about renewables. And, you know, I came from generation. Yeah, renewables are fun. But I'm going to tell you, renewables can't do anything without T&D. If they don't have the grid, what good are they? So what we have to do, in my opinion, is we somehow have to make T&D glamorous. And I can tell you, I bet you the people in Florida from Hurricane Ian, most of them love our linemen. They love anybody that can come and help them put their power back. So there is glamour to what transmission and distribution does. I just don't think we talk about it enough. We're the type of people, you put your head down, you get your work done. You know, we're not like, you know, the linemen are heroes, and they wouldn't even be called heroes to themselves. So anyway, I'm just saying we need to work towards making our industry, our T&D, a lot more glamorous. And the ways we do that is what we've learned at this conference. I don't know how many sessions were about technology. And I can tell you, anybody coming out of school right now, they've got better idea on how to use technology than I will ever have. So I think that what we need to do, looking forward, is we need to look at that technology, those sophisticated tools that we have. We've got LiDAR, we've got GIS, we've got drones, we've got all this cool stuff. And we've got to figure out how to communicate to people, to young people, how to make that exciting. Because it's going to take somebody with all the technology know-how and with the business know-how and merging those together, and that's how we're going to face many of the challenges that we're going to see. We've got to get more people in. We've got more money than we are spending, and I know this is industry-wide. We're spending more money in T&D than I have ever seen us spend on infrastructure. We're not spending a whole lot on generation anymore at Duke. We're spending it on trying to find different types of generation, but we're spending a lot of money on infrastructure. And we're going to be looking for resources. You know, my group will be the first ones to tell you we need more people to get done the work we're trying to do. And we're just the siting permitting engagement group. Think about the project managers, think about the linemen, think about the veg folks. We need more resources. Well, where are we going to get those? We want to pick the best and the brightest, and everybody's going to be fighting for those resources. So the way we get them is we talk about how great it is to use technology to come into us and bring innovative ideas, bring different ways of looking at things, and that's how you get new people coming into the organization. And I think that that's where the challenge for us, particularly somebody like me who's been here a long time, is the challenge is keeping my mind open, because sometimes if you've been here a long time, it's the way it's always been. I love getting new people in my group because they will ask us, why do we do it this way? And you know, most of us hadn't thought about that in a while, you know, because we've been doing it for so long. So I think that's part of what our challenge is, and that's part of how exciting it's going to be going forward, is trying to get these new people in and bring that new energy. So to close, I will say, yes, absolutely. I think the future is bright for transmission and distribution. I think it's exciting, and I am looking forward to being part of it and to watching it change along the way. How'd that go?
Good job. Great job. Great job.
Okay, the easy part's over.
it's over,
Okay,
if it's
so,
just beginning.
so this is the disclaimer. I've already talked to Amy about this. Now, how much time do I have left? Almost an hour? We don't have to be here an hour. Y'all have had 2.5 or 2 long days. I've got no problem. If this is the fireside chat, by the way, without any bourbon, I've never done that before, but if this is a fireside chat with Amy, we can talk for hours because we've done it. So I give y'all the license that we'll go through some of the questions, and then if you just are like, come on, Kathy, shut up, Amy, shut up, throw the towel in, let Carmen know, and then we'll cut it off. But I'm going to be around if you still want to talk to me, and I'm sure Amy's going to be around. So I just don't want you guys to, for it to drag on and on and on. I want y'all to get a lot out of it, and I don't want you guys to leave here tired. I want you to leave here energized, okay? Nothing like taking over, huh?
I love it. I love it. And it's really an honor to be here with you, Kathy. I was looking at Kathy's speaking notes that she had sent me about the presentation. She wanted to get some feedback, and I saw this. She was voluntold by Carmen and I. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound very good. But it is true. I did voluntold her while she was at another conference. And she's like, we need to talk a bit. But for those of you, I'm sure you've met Carmen. She's also with Jacobs, but she's been a big part of the Plenary community, helping plan this entire conference. And so she came to me and she said, Amy, we need a final speaker. I really want someone from the industry that can talk about where we've been for the last, several decades and where we're going. And I said, Kathy Hope. And she said, okay. And I said, why Kathy? And I said, Kathy, we've known each other for about 5 years now, and I consider you a friend. I am really honored and love the stories that we share about your career in the industry. You've certainly inspired me. I feel like the conversations we have always leaves me going to bed at night thinking about what we talked about, how we could do things differently, improvements, and I'm sure that you could do the same. And we have the ability, you work with a lot of different consultants, you're in the communities, we work with a lot of different utilities. So I think more than anything, the more that we can share our stories, we are at an unprecedented time in the industry where there's IIJA and IRA and grid resiliency, and we are going to see build-outs in the next decades that we've not seen in the last decades at a pace of play that we've not seen before and previously. So, you've been through a lot of these challenges, and your career has been pretty amazing. But we've got a lot of questions, and so I really wanted to just say, yes, we did voluntold Kathy, and I thank you for being amenable to presenting and talking with this group, because I do think you're inspirational. And Kathy's first concern was, I just have the Duke Energy perspective, and I said, that's okay. That's a pretty good perspective to have, and I think that we can take questions from all over. So. This isn't just Duke's issue. This isn't just the state of North Carolina. It's not even just the US, but this is global, that we are electrifying the industry. There's going to be more demand than there's ever been. So, ROW13 is a great conference for all of us to get to be here to network with each other. So I just think it's really, really important as we talk through the innovations and all of that. So you talked a lot about building trust, and we feel like that's part of just even our relationship. But we've talked a lot about how stakeholder engagement has evolved over, the last 6 years, even at Duke Energy. But one of the things I've heard you say is, getting out into the communities before projects happen, the importance of that. And I agree with you completely. I'm pretty sure probably everyone in the room does. But can you give us an example of, how your team is doing that, and just some examples and why you think that that's working and the importance of it?
So I'll tell you, it's not necessarily just my team, and I think that's where Duke does really, really good in some places, and then we have a lot to learn in other places, is that we have a whole network of corporate communication people, our community relations folks, our stakeholder engagement, our governmental affairs, plus my team in transmission. We've got a customer delivery team. So we've got lots of engagement people all over the company. And some of the things that we talk about is in the state president's office. Basically, every state has a state president. Amy Spiller is in Indiana and Kentucky, but they've got a pocket of money, and so it's investing in the community. That's what you do when we're getting ready to do a new greenfield line in a county that we already know. They're not. I would say they're not Duke friendly. Now remember, these are Kathy's words. I'm not a Duke Power spokesperson, but a Duke Energy spokesperson. But they're not Duke friendly. What we want to do is we want to show them that one of our values is truly the community and building trust in the community. So asking that community, what can we do? And we've done this in a couple of places. We've bought playground equipment. We've given a donation to a tree fund. We've done those kinds of things in the communities. I think the thing is the monies are there. There's two things that happen. First of all, we have to get ahead of it because it doesn't do us a lot of good because it looks like we're paying them off if we're doing it right when we're doing the project. So we really need to build it early, particularly in these communities that we already know that we call it a net promoter score that's lower. But we want to, which is a customer satisfaction score. So we want to get out there early. The problem we have, though, is there are some communities that we offer we offer playground equipment, we offer a certain amount of money here, there, and they want 3 times more than that. And that becomes a problem. Because then you get, and it's like property owners, you get people going, well, you gave that community this much money, and how come you're not giving my community? So it's a balance, and so I think we've been really successful in some places where we've done those kinds of things, but I also think that it can be a slippery slope, and we have to be very targeted on why we're doing it and what we're going to do. And that is critical with our community relations folks. They are a critical piece of that because they're the ones that are embedded in their communities, and they're the ones that are like the spokesperson for what's going on in the community for us. Did that answer your question?
Yes, okay. And I think it's interesting, thinking about kids, you're not always going to make everyone happy, and it's not because I told you so kind of situation, but we've talked a lot about just kind of having the mass, what's in the middle, trying to accommodate all of those needs and looking at the outliers. But I think it's important to take all of that into consideration. I think sometimes we have just biases as humans, like as we think we know what the community wants. And I think it's really important for us to just kind of take a step back and really, really listen and hear what they're asking for. Because I think that's sometimes when we miss the mark a little bit.
And we're really bad about that. I mean, we really are bad at making assumptions what a community wants and not asking them. And I think we're getting better. I mean, there's pockets always that are world class versus people that need improvement, and we can always get better. I think we're all human, and so we all make mistakes, and we all don't say the words the right way, and then we have to mitigate some ill will that we have that we didn't intend to create all along.
So I'm looking at the questions, and as Carmen said, we developed some of our own questions to make Kathy feel comfortable and to make sure I wasn't
just already jumping to these.
Well, I'm not going to jump to those yet, but I was looking at some of them as they were coming in while you were talking, and they seemed to mimic some of the ones that we had thought that might be asked. So, one of the things that you talked about during your presentation was just the cost of stakeholder engagement, and you also talked about benchmarking. I know you and I have talked about this, like at what point do you bring in stakeholder engagement and how much through the project, but tell me your thought process on how much is enough, how much is too little, and then when do you know that you've done enough?
So it's interesting because when I got, like I was telling you, is my first really involvement besides ice storms and hurricane work with property owners and customers was really in the vegetation group. And that group is marvelous, so much better than I could ever be at talking to people. Just generally understanding what they're saying and then working through whatever issue. And we're not always successful, but they're successful, I would say 95% of the time. And so when I got this group, and Randy and I were talking, And the first thing we're thinking about is we've got all these capital projects. How in the world are we going to cover all these projects? So we created it can be called a heat map. I call it a risk matrix. And that's the first thing we did, is we created a risk matrix asking all these questions about how many people are going to be involved, how many communities, how many HOAs, number of parcels. We created this matrix, or this questionnaire, that while you filled out all that, then it populated on a heat map. And if it was a high risk, we wanted to really do a robust stakeholder engagement plan on that. If it was medium risk, it was, we do some of it, but not like the whole Cadillac, or maybe it's a Mercedes now. But then if it was low risk, then it wouldn't be a whole lot. So I think that was our first step in doing that. None of the other engagement groups at Duke had done that. And that's me and Randy, because we are risk-based people. We are looking at it going, okay, what's the risk? What's the risk of success and that kind of thing? And I think you have to look at it that way too, because we can't just throw money at every single project. We can't put our best engagement folks on a project that is a low risk, like changing a transformer in and out or something inside a substation. So what we do is, with our high risk, and that's what I'm going to focus on, because our high risk projects are typically our greenfield projects, and then some of our rebuild projects that are going through communities where VEG has been through here, but we've not really upgraded the infrastructure. And so we take a look at that and do some demographics, all kinds of information, get lots of information for the CRM. Then we create a stakeholder engagement plan, and we have to use consultants to do that. We can create a plan, but we don't have enough people. I've got a very small group. I have maybe 8, 9 people in the engagement organization across 6 states. So we have to use consultants. And the thing that I've found is consultant money is value-added money when you're getting people that have resources that I can't get at Duke. We do the same thing in siting too. We use consultants because the consultants have seen more. They've seen more utilities. They can tell us what to do, what not to do, give us suggestions. So that's how we bring in consultants. And on high-risk projects, we call it field engagement. So we will have an engagement person with our project in the site and acquire, doing the acquisition. But when we start design and build, and we actually are getting boots on the ground, then we will hire a consultant that will do what we call field engagement. And they basically try to answer all the questions and work on solutions to individual property owner problems all along the way. So we get very few things bubbling up all the way to me, to my director, Sophia, to me, and ultimately to George, and to even Lynn Good. We don't get that many bubbled up. But once again, how do you measure it? Because if all they see are the things that bubble up that are going to hell in a handbasket, then how do you prove that we're doing all this good work? And I think, like I said, that's the challenge. But so we use consultants a lot in engagement. We use consultants a lot in siting and permitting too, because we have a really small core team, and then we utilize them to do that. I think I've kind of moved away from your question a little bit. But
that's totally fine. How
it is a fireside chat after a while,
talk.
Right?
Add a little bourbon and we'll get really sidetracked. One of the things that I think about, return on investment, and it's very easy to calculate return on investment when you just look at the dollars and cents, but that's really not the case anymore. And you look at all of the public involvement and your community involvement as, an electrical provider. It's really, really important to take in the information from all your stakeholders. So how do you measure return on investment of the emotional value, the empathetic value? And we're seeing environmental justice being added to all of these projects. And so I think we're gonna have to, if there's a takeaway at all, is how do we benchmark the return on investment for the social piece of it? And how, that's not just a dollar and cents number. And so communicating that to the leaders who are over the projects or the design teams that are managing the projects. I think when you take the stakeholder engagement piece at the beginning and you're collecting all the information, it does help your projects be more efficient. You may not have planned on those scenarios at the beginning, but as you learn more, it does help mitigate what happens in the future and with the design phase of it.
So,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the reasons we started our engagement team within transmission is because we were getting projects delayed. I'm not saying we got them stopped. I think one we got stopped. We were getting them delayed, and it was because all of the stakeholder engagement, or the majority of it, sat with permitting, siting, and the project manager. We didn't have an engagement group. And I think that does the project a disservice, but it also does the project manager a disservice, because project managers do not just have 1 or 2 projects. They have 30 projects, all in different phases. So the engagement group was created to assist the project manager so that they could handle the questions about the project. They could handle, to a point, the discussion around the need of the project. You know, that's why we created stakeholder engagement. That's why our projects, in my opinion, have become, I don't know if efficient is the right word, but I do feel like that we have less, I call them a flash, but we have less media attention on some of our projects that I feel like without our stakeholder engagement group, then the project manager would spend more time on the phone with the property owners and customers than actually trying to work through some of the real design issues or the construction issues. So I think adding that engagement, that public engagement piece to the project has really made it more effective, and we hit our dates more. But I will tell you that from a permitting standpoint, and we've grown our siting group. When I came 6 years ago, we had maybe 2, 3 siting people. I think Randy had just hired a 3rd one. So we didn't have that many. No, we had 3 and we hired another one. So our siting group's grown too. And our permitting group has been around a long time, and they have such an incredible relationship with the regulators. And I think that's the model that I used when we were creating the engagement team, is that relationship. Because the relationship we have with most of our regulators, and Randy, you'll correct me, he will correct me if I'm wrong, but the relationship we have is they know we want to do the right thing, but they also know we screw up sometimes. And we screw up because we've got brand new project managers, we've got brand new permitting people. We always want to do the right thing. And then when we mess up, and we are transparent about, and we say we screwed up, and this is what we're going to do, then I think that helps build some of the trust. And I see some of the questions up here about trust, but I think it's just like building it with a person. If you screw up, just say you screwed up and say, let's fix this and we'll do better next time. I think that's some of the trust I think, Randy, you and your team have with our regulators. And that's the trust I want our public engagement folks to have with not only internal people, but to have with the property owners and the customers and the communities that we serve. Does that help?
Yeah, and there are a lot of questions about trust, but I am going to get to some of these questions, and we'll start with this one. So there must be a need for funding and excitement. So I think this question seems to be more popular than the others, but what are ways to influence utility business leadership to invest and support groups like vegetation, siting, and engagement? Okay,
that's got to be from one of my people that used to work for me. So anyway, okay, so this is Kathy talking, not a general manager at Duke Energy. So I'm going to tell you, because you get transparency with me. That's the one scary thing that Carmen and Amy know. You get a lot of transparency with me, is there has to be an advocate. I am a huge advocate for VEG. I'm a huge advocate for stakeholder engagement, siting, permitting. I'm a huge advocate. You have got, and it's like any big corporation, you have got to find advocates. And that's how you get business leadership, utility business leadership. You find somebody that'll listen to you. You pick your influencers and you find those people and you camp out and you talk to them. You get them on your side. You help them understand. And we're kind of in that right now, because when you start changing leadership at the top, then you have to re-educate them. You know, people that don't grow up with stakeholder and people that grow up in a plant like me, you have to be taught the engagement side of it. You do. You have to experience it. You got to see what people go through. So I think the easy answer is to find the advocate. I think with my veg team that I used to have and the team I have right now, I'm a huge advocate, and I push hard for things that I think are right and should be done. I will tell you that I lose sometimes. So the other piece of this is, even if you lose and you don't get your way one time, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And so you just go at it at a different angle. And I think that's probably why I've been around. I've been in the transmission business since, almost 20 years or so. Is that right? Long time. Anyway, I think that's what, I didn't have that kind of voice when I was over in generation. It was different over there. In transmission, though, I'm a higher leader, and I have a voice, and so and sometimes I'm the voice of reason, and sometimes I'm the voice of, why are you doing this? That kind of thing. So I think you got to find your advocates, and you got to get people over on your side, and you've got to find your influencers.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't even know if that answers that question, but that's off the top of my head what I would say.
No, I think it definitely answers the question, and I think we see that no matter what company you're working for, whether you're a consultant or a utility, however that might be, your role in the right-of-way, the whole definition of the project. But having the advocate, we've talked a lot about lessons learned, being able to share the lessons learned, not only your successes, but your failures. Mm-hmm. Those really help. And the more we can up-message those types of scenarios, it does help build advocacy within the organizations and with communities too, as you're talking about support. So I think this is a really interesting one, so make sure it didn't move.
Are y'all tired yet? Okay, just
Are you tired yet?
No, I'm fine. I'm telling you, I can go on. I got my water. I'm ready.
She told me she was afraid she'd get tired. I said,
yeah.
You'll be energized once you get up here. Let's see. Oh, this one has moved up. Okay, I think this is an interesting one. Duke appears to have strong positive relationship with the Catawba Nation. What advice do you have for how to engage Indigenous communities in energy transport?
Listen, listen, listen. That's what I can tell you. I haven't had a lot of experience with the Catawba tribe, and Aaron's going to correct me. But I've had experience with the Cherokee tribe, and I'm just going to tell you it's not just with Indigenous people, it's with anybody. You have got to have an open mind, you really do. And for the first time I got invited to go to meet with the tribal council over in the Cherokee area, and it was amazing. And you think about all this stuff because you don't know what you don't know. I get over there and we have a spokesperson who's amazing talking to them. I was like the spokesmodel sitting in the audience. But afterwards we chatted with each other. They're just regular people talking to you, and once again it's all about listening, because for Cherokee there's certain things that they want to do, and there's certain things that they don't want to do, and we need to know those kinds of things, and we won't know until we listen to them. So I think that's where, with the Catawba tribe, with the Cherokee, we've been really fortunate that the people we have working with those tribes, being the face of Duke, are incredible people. But they listen, and they've built up a lot of credibility and built that relationship that we keep talking about. So that's what I would say, is that's how you do it. You go and you listen. You keep your mouth shut for a while, and you just listen to what they have to say. Because most times, and this is what my veg group taught me, most times the first 5 or 10 minutes are them telling you how bad you've messed up, and how you've taken advantage, and I'm not talking about the tribe, I'm just talking about in general. And then once they get their venting out, then you can actually have a conversation. And past the emotion, you can see what's really, really on their minds. And that's what you want to, that's what you need to get to. You gotta just have a thick skin and listen to it. Because Duke's been around over 100 years. We've got property owners whose great-great-great-grandparents sold us easements, you know, for hardly anything, and we've left, you know, and we damage those sometimes. And they remember that. They remember their grandfather talking about it. They remember the tree we had to cut down. So the thing is, just you got to listen. You just really have to listen, and you cannot go in there with your firm going, well, this is, you know, this is what we have to do. You have to listen. That was a long answer, but I think it's really an important answer, because I think that goes a long way. Just listening goes a long way.
No, I have to agree with you. When I worked for the utility, we were doing some excavation and ran across some very, very sensitive cultural resource impacts. And we had rules of engagement because of the memorandum of agreements that we had with the Corps of Engineers. But, you know, to invite the tribal, the indigenous people to the site and to hear their concerns and to listen gave me a completely different perspective, one I had never had before. And so it really has made me think about differently. It was the first time for me, but very, very memorable. And, you know, we all have opinions, and I think it's just how we listen and take that into consideration. And, you know, not often, you know, people always feel like they need to give an answer immediately, and you don't always have to give an answer immediately, but they do need to feel heard. So I think that's really, really good. Let's see. This one keeps moving around on me, but I think it's a good one. All right. Building trust takes time, yet timeframes for transmission projects get shorter by the day. How does industry intend to adjust its views of project schedules?
Whoever wrote this, I love it because it is a pet peeve of mine. I do not understand within even our transmission organization why we can't plan further in advance. We have a 5 and 10 year plan for planning. So it goes down to the budget. And once again, this is Kathy talking here, is that corporations chase stockholder price, you know, your stock price. I mean, that's what corporations, we have our annual, our discussions, our quarterly discussions with the stock, with Wall Street and stuff like that. So the stock price is really important. And Duke in particular has a really robust group of people that invest in the company. And I'm one of them. I get my dividend, and I love my dividend, and I want Duke to do real well, and the stock price is really important to me. However, you know, we're always looking for return on investment. We're looking at our ROE. We're looking at all this, and we tend to budget, in Kathy's opinion, very short-sightedly, because like I was saying earlier, is that if you're going to do stakeholder engagement early, you got to spend money. Well, what happens is as we budget for a certain amount of money based on a certain amount of projects or certain projects to be done in 1 year. We budget for engineering to be done 1 year and construction to be done the next year. What we really don't always budget for is when is the acquisition going to take place, and when does stakeholder engagements take place. So for me, the pet peeve is nobody's stepped back and looked at, okay, this project, instead of saying, oh, we need to do this project in 2 years, no, you should step back and say, you know, we need to look at this project over a 4-year period, and we need to put a little money in this year, little money in this year, and then the rest of the money in the 2 years. But we don't plan that way. So I think somebody had a question on what do you wish for Duke Energy. I wish we would learn to plan and budget based on what we need to be doing versus like the stock price and stuff like that. And that is a real layman's terms, you know, simple terms, what we do. But I think our planning process is really not conducive to starting projects early. And I will tell you the other pet peeve, since somebody asked, is economic development. I love economic development. I love the fact that our economy is doing great. But we have a lot of brand new customers coming in. They're going to bring all kind of revenue. It's great, except they want it yesterday. Now tell me, how in the world can a new business come in, they want us to put a new transmission line in to connect to them, and they only give us less than a year to do it? There's no time for stakeholder engagement. So for me, our infrastructure projects, it's a little easier to plan ahead and push maybe our planning group and our finance group to budget according to what we have to spend. Lynn Good even said we needed to start 2 or 3 years ahead on engagement. So she knows that. It's just a matter of coming down to the, it's a big corporation, how the planning process is, how the budgeting process is. So I think we've got a way that we can help with that, but the economic development, I don't know how to fix that. I really don't. Because, we want the revenue, people want the jobs, and to me, that's probably one of the bigger challenges that we have, at least in the Carolinas and in the Midwest. Kelly and Jason don't know about Florida from an economic development standpoint, but I just think that that's a huge challenge because we can't get it done fast enough and do it the right way. So I think that answered something about how fast projects are in transmission too.
Yeah, I think about all of the different presentations that have been over the last several days. I think, the human element is one aspect of it, but innovation is going to have to play a role in how we accelerate project schedules, or at least accommodate the number of projects that are going on at the same time. When you look at all of the regulatory process, which there's efforts underway to speed up that process, but I think the innovation piece is going to be really critical. I know that there's been a lot of amazing presentations on LiDAR and aerial survey, and just how we're collecting data in the field and how we're analyzing it. But the faster that we can do those types of things, and we talked about the importance of this conference. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when we're all talking about the needs, and then we get investment for that. So for all of those that are out there that are working on the innovation to make this a better process and one for everyone to understand, thank you. I know we have some pretty amazing team out there that's helping us do things. They always laugh at me when I call them because I am not that innovative, I don't think, anymore. Let's see. All right, I think this is an interesting question. It's just a matter of perspective for sure. How do you communicate with some stakeholders who simply oppose no matter what? And how do you balance public versus private, lobby-driven, sometimes interest? And I can repeat it if you
No, I can see it. So that's such a loaded question because once again, I have such a myopic perception of what Duke does, and I'm sure there's other things that other companies do that I'm not aware of. So this is just how I deal with anything, is that you're never going to please everybody, and the type of person that I am, and the type of person that leads my group is that you have a scale here, and my belief, and it may be simplistic, but my belief is when it comes to people in general, most people are right here in the middle. They are. And we all have pretty much the same values. Then when you're looking at some kind of scale, you definitely have groups of people and communities that are underserved or overburdened or anything like that. And then you've got the loud crowd that is vocal no matter what, that you will never please. And so it's like what Duke has is I call Net Promoter Score. So what we try to do in Net Promoter Score is the detractors unless there's a whole lot of them, there's not a lot you can do with a detractor. They're pretty much in. And, but what we try to do is we take those middle people and we try to move them up to be more advocates for Duke. And if I'm looking at stakeholder engagement, and this is basically around an opposition group, then I'm gonna do what I need to kind of keep them at bay. But my focus is gonna be on the underserved and the overburdened and the ones that don't have the voice. Because I think personally that's the right thing to do, is you work with the people that understand, I know I need electricity. I don't like it coming through my property, but I understand it. You know, you've done a really good job explaining it to me. Then you've got the people that don't have a voice at all. And then, like I said, you've got a combination of opposers. You've got the organized opposers that won't like anything that you do. And then you've got the people that are upset because you didn't do a good job explaining it. So I want to take those people and the rest of the people, and those are the ones that I want to focus all my energy on. Because I can't do a lot about, I will never be able to change the mind of the opposing group. Why waste the energy in trying to do that? Let's just hold them at bay and do everything we can. Because one thing we do want is, you know, Duke wants to keep its reputation. You know, we try to do a good job. We're human, we make mistakes. But I think I'm like that with people in general. I think my group will tell me that. It's the ones that are the loud ones that will just are naysayers, then I'm not giving them a whole lot of energy unless they start causing problems with my group, and then I'm all over them. But I just don't, I just try not to waste my energy on that. I want to really focus on the people that don't have a voice and the people that we have not done a really good job of explaining things to. Does that help? I don't know who asked the question. Does that help a little bit?
I think it addresses it for me. So we got a couple more questions that I'd really like to get to.
Everybody okay? Any
I'm
white towels want to be thrown in? Okay.
So adapting infrastructure for climate change often means bigger, more impactful, urgent works. And you talked about that with the economic development. And you and I were talking about ESG and all of that this morning. That is not exactly what this question is about, but it is part of the process. So based on the climate change and these bigger projects and larger impacts, how can we adapt while aiming for smaller ecological footprint?
Okay. I don't think I understand the question. I'm sorry. Can you read it to me again?
So
wait a minute. If somebody in my group understood that question, y'all can answer it, okay? So read it to me again.
So adapting infrastructures for climate change, think of bigger, more impactful, urgent type projects. Like you were talking about economic development. I'm going to kind of read between the lines here, but you were talking about companies that come in and they want something yesterday so that they can put their new facility online. Knowing those things, expediting project schedules, you know, do you think with all of that that there's a way to minimize or have a smaller ecological footprint? So the footprint that's going in. And I told you I wasn't going to ask you any questions.
No, I don't mind answering it. I'm just trying to figure out how to use the words that I want to use. You know, we talked about economic development, and y'all kind of know my thoughts on that. But I just don't know what we're going to do with new industry coming in, more solar coming in, more offshore wind coming in, and the fact we're going to need transmission lines to get there. I don't know how to lower the footprint of what we need. I mean, because we're going to need what we need. I think once again, and I'm going off on a limb here. This is something my team and I do. We brainstorm all the time. So right now I'm going to pretend like I'm brainstorming with them because they'll correct me if I screw up. And but to me, once again, we're very siloed as an industry. We've got solar, we've got offshore wind, we've got batteries we're working on. We're trying to decarbonize our footprint. We're doing all of this, And I just don't know if there's anybody looking out going, what's the impact to all of this? So if you, and it may not be possible, but Harry mentioned something like this. If you're removing a coal-fired station, you can't put a solar array there, not at least in North Carolina, because it doesn't work. We don't have a lot of solar in the mountains of North Carolina. So I don't know, and I'm not in this, but I don't know if Duke's looking at, can we replace one with the other? Because when you're removing a coal-fired plant, it'd be good to put combustion turbine there, but it's still gas. It's still a fossil fuel. So I think that as an industry, we really need to look at, we want to go more with renewables. We want to do a lot of these things, but it's going to take transmission lines to connect all this together. And I just don't know that there's a big footprint or somebody, some person, some group looking at, well, if we do it here, because a solar developer is looking for the best place to put that solar array. And we got to get a transmission line there. It's not like he or she, it's not like that developer is looking for the closest line, closest place they can find close to a transmission line. They're looking for the best price they can get on a piece of property. And then offshore wind, it's got all kind of challenges with, underground, under the water transmission, and then going from the seashore, from the coast all the way inland to other people. So I don't know that I can answer that question. I just think that if our country is going more towards renewables and more towards stuff, and they're still concerned about the fact that we're having to build new transmission lines and new substations, then we need to all get together and figure out the best way to do that. And that's just kumbaya, but I think we need to do that.
I don't think that there is a right or wrong
answer. That's a hard
answer.
question, whoever asked
I don't
that.
think there's a right or wrong answer to that. And I think that all utilities are facing this question right now. How do we lower not only carbon impacts, but the ecological impacts? And I was just in a meeting on Monday with a cooperative, and they're looking at their challenges. They're very coal-based, but looking at how they're going to go through this energy transition and the time frame that they have to do it in, and looking at all the regulatory constraints that are coming quickly. And a lot of the innovation is just not there yet. And so I think it's going to take a real investment in our time and knowledge and commitments for all of us to figure this out. This isn't just one person going to figure this out on an island, but this is truly, I think, why we're all here today. I'll ask two more questions.
Okay, I want to say one other thing, though. One thing that we do from a siting perspective is we really do look at utilizing the same corridors that we already have, and I'm sure other utilities do that too. And I'm not going to say that cuts down on the environmental footprint, because we already have something there, but what it does do is it keeps us from a brand new impact someplace else. So I do think that we try really hard, and it comes to our transmission planning group too, and how the different transmission systems are arranged in each one of the states and that kind of thing. But one thing we do even today is to try to utilize existing corridors. Even if we have to get additional easements, we really do try to utilize existing corridors, because that helps with the public, because they want to see us using those existing corridors without new impacts. So we do try to do some of that.
So along this similar train of thought, we've talked about all of the investment that is going to be in the transmission and distribution assets. What do you think some of the biggest challenges are with the pace of play, the time that we have to go from today to 2030 to 2040 to 2050, the decades that you didn't have on your presentation?
I don't know how we're going to get there. I'll just be honest. I think goals are amazing, and I think it's just like having a 0 for a safety goal. Nobody gets hurt at all, and it's a goal, but people do get hurt, and we just want to minimize as much as the impact of how they're hurt on you know, on the rest of their life and that kind of thing. So, but it's a goal, and it's something we really want. And I am not throwing Duke Energy under the bus by any means, because I'm not going to be here in 2050. But I'm going to tell you is, I think it's a wonderful plan, and I know that we are working really hard to get there. And I'm not saying we won't. What I have seen in the last 40 years is I've seen us do this and this and this, is that we have these goals, and then the next thing you know, we turn around and we got different goals. And for us to meet 2030, 2050, for the country to get where we want to get, we got to stay on mission. And honestly, I don't see a really good track record of companies in general and even our government staying on mission for what, the next 20 years? So I mean, I think it's a wonderful goal, and I'm all for it. I do think there's a lot that we have to learn from a transmission perspective on how to keep renewables. Harry talked a lot about that, and I'm not privy to some of that. I mean, some of the things that Harry talked to me about, I know a little bit about, but he knew them in much more details. But I think it's an incredible goal. I think it is achievable. I think it's achievable with your eyes wide open and all the right smart people in the room. But we've got a lot of hard work to do in order to achieve that goal. And our company has changed so much in 40 years. I can't imagine it staying the same for the next 20 or 30 years. So I just hope we can stay on mission and do what we want to do and do it the right way.
Yeah, with challenges come a lot of opportunities, and it was interesting to walk around the vendor booths and see, you know, just the different technology that's there. But I think, again, we're going to really have to rely on advancements in the way we do things and how we do things and our thought process around them. So with challenges come opportunities. And my old boss at DP&L used to always come to me and say, may I have an opportunity for you? And I'm like, I'm packing my bag and I'm getting out of here, because that opportunity meant it was going to be a really hard project or something that I didn't want to deal with. So, but that was how he always phrased it, is I have an opportunity for you. So, you know, one of the things we wanted to leave today is just to have people inspired. You know, we've been here for 3 days. You've heard a lot of presentations. You know, what words of wisdom over your last 40 years, your career at Duke, you know, what words of wisdom do you have, and, you know, words of inspiration, what you've heard and learned?
So Amy told me she was going to ask me this question, and I didn't prepare for it. So you're going to get it shooting from the hip. So I'm going to tell you is that the words of advice that I would give anybody, whether they were new in their career, the middle of their career, or in the sunset of their career like I am, is be a sponge. Learn everything you can. Talk to anybody that will listen and you can listen to. Because I think what success looks like going forward in our industry is that we get the best, the brightest, the smartest people in the room. And those are not always the ones that are engineers like me. They're the ones that have the experience. We get the field people, we get our veg people, we get people that have been talking to industry leaders, we get all the smart people in the room, and we listen to each other, and then we use some of that technology. I know we've got a long way to go in our industry around technology, and honestly, the utility industry has never been on the bleeding edge of technology. But we've got to harness the technology that we know about. Duke has a group called, we call it Lighthouse. And I think Jack Gardner talked a little bit about what they were doing with Lighthouse. And it puts people in a perspective where it's out of the box thinking. If you had this, what could you do? And I think we have to do more of that. We have to learn more from other people. That's the one thing that I would say is those are the words of wisdom. Learn as much as you can. Jump around a little bit. Don't stay in the same industry that you've been in forever. I mean, learn, or the same group or something. Just learn from other people. The other thing that I will tell you is that, and this comes from, if anybody was at the UAA conference, I said the same thing, is the words of wisdom that I would have is, if you are a people leader now, teach everything that you know to the people that work for you. And if you are an individual contributor, is what I call them, but if you're but you're still a leader. If you're a leader but you don't have people reporting to you, learn everything that whoever you report to. Learn everything they know. Learn how they make decisions. Learn how the information they get in order to make a decision. Learn that process. Learn as much as you can, because that's what happened to me. I am living proof that a perspective, one job can change your perspective. I am a better person because I got that veg group, because they taught me a lot. I'm a better person because of the group I have now, and it's all because they changed my perspective on things. I think that's my word of wisdom. Find a leader that you can emulate. Be a leader that can be emulated, and then be a sponge for pretty much any new technology, anything new. Because, like one of my slides said, I don't care who you are, you're never the smartest person in the room. There's other people, because that's what, we didn't talk about diversity, but that's what diversity is all about. I've got an incredibly diverse team, siting, permitting, and engagement, and they are a better team for it, because new ideas come, they just come to the table, and we're like, oh crap, we never thought about that. Because once again, you get somebody with a different perspective. And I think that would be my words of wisdom going forward. I wish somebody would have sat me down 30 years ago or 35 years ago and said, Kathy, keep your ears open and just learn to listen and just soak up everything that you can learn from anybody. Because it'll change your life and it'll change your perspective. So that's basically, I don't know if that's inspirational or not, but it's meant to be.
I think it's inspirational. And just to add to that, you're right, we didn't really talk about diversity, but for all of those that are leading people and for those that are in the beginning stages of their career, for people leaders, it's so important for us to listen. What I have learned from some of our younger and more diverse backgrounds has really been some of the shifts that I've had in my career. And, just listening and understanding and sharing what they've told makes us all better. So I said, I'm going to ask you one more question, because I like this one at the bottom. Kathy Hope, the real Kathy Hope.
I know.
What are your plans for your future after Duke Energy?
Okay, so that's not what that question says. It says, what are your hopes for the future of Duke Energy? Let me start with that one.
Well, there's another question that says...
Okay, I'll answer both of them. My hopes for the future of Duke Energy is great stock price, because I've got Duke stock, and I'm going to retire, and I want to keep my portfolio. That's the first thing. So, and the other one was, what am I going to do?
What are you going to do after Duke Energy? What is next for you after Duke Energy?
So honestly, I don't know. And the thing is I've been talking to different people. As you can tell, I like to talk, and I don't know. I will tell you that the first 3 or 4 weeks, I'm going to play golf every day. I'm going to play golf until I'm sick of it, because I hadn't been able to play golf much in the last 6 years. So I'm going to play golf first. They tell me when you retire, the first 5 years is when you do most of your traveling. So I created my bucket list, and Brian says, your bucket list will take us 10 years. I went, let's get started. But I don't want to lose touch with the industry either. Like I said, I've been here a long time. I just did I met some wonderful people up in Milwaukee at the UAA conference, and I talked about leadership. I think I have a lot to say when it comes to leadership, because trust me, I've had days that I'm a really bad leader, and that's the one thing that my group knows. I know the days I'm a bad leader, and I'll admit it. And then I know days that I have knocked it out of the park, and I like that feeling. So I want to do something in that area. I'm not sure though, but the first 3 or 4 weeks it's going to be playing golf, and not losing touch with my group.
So I mean, you told them that we could sit up here and talk forever, and we have. So Carmen, we'll let you close it out.
So thankful to both of you, Kathy and Amy, for doing this and for having this conversation. And one of the things as we were preparing for this was we thought about naming the talk at one point Kathy Hope on Hope. And, you know, I think we've talked a lot about trust, we've talked about challenges and opportunities, but, you know, it has been a challenging number of years as well, and it's a challenging industry, but being here for the last several days, it really has given me a lot of hope too, because where we are and the pace that we're moving in terms of innovation, the diversity of thought leadership that's in this room and that's been at this conference, you know, that really gives me hope towards achieving some of these big goals that we have ahead of us. And so I just, yeah, really am thankful to the two of you for sharing your perspectives today, and grateful to everybody that's been here sharing their knowledge and all the great discussions that have happened. So to wrap up the symposium, I'm going to ask our host and chair, Tom, to come up, and thanks, everybody.
That was excellent, Kathy and Amy. Thank you for that, and wonderful time. And this has been just a great exchange of ideas, and have been so impressed by everything that's been presented here. I wanted to share a quote from Aldo Leopold from the Sand County Almanac, where he said, "Civilization has so cluttered this elemental man-earth relationship with gadgets and middlemen that awareness of it is growing dim. We fancy the industry supports us, forgetting what supports industry." And I think that's incredibly important for us to think about as we wrap this up, really, that these natural resources that we're stewards of, that is what we're here to support, and make sure that those resources continue to support us. Also, just wanted to express my deepest thanks to everyone who has made this happen, Deona, all the UAA crew that's made this happen. It's just been monumental to see how well they've done with this, and greatly appreciative of all the sponsors that have been here over these past 3 days. So thank you. Thanks to each and every one of you.
So I know it's everyone's probably ready to go, but just wanted to make a few also closing comments as well. It has been an amazing few days. For me personally, I've really enjoyed getting to connect with people that I've known for a few years, but also develop and make some new relationships. Hope all of you have been able to take advantage of that as well. Appreciate you all sticking around. I think for those of you that are relatively new, if this is your first Right Away Symposium, we're glad you came. We hope you will come back. This is truly a great symposium. A lot of issues were discussed, and as was mentioned, there's lots of challenges, but also lots of opportunities. And as I think about how this event does not happen annually, you know, we were having a dinner the other night, we were talking about technology and kind of laughing about some of the things that our parents experienced and some of the things that we've experienced. You know, just think about, you know, we had a whole concurrent session on technology and where we are today, and when we do meet again, where are things going to be and how are they going to be, how will they have evolved? There's a lot of change that's going to happen, and change does seem to be happening at a more rapid pace. Again, I wanted to, as Tom mentioned, want to thank the UAA for putting on this event, and Dennis and his staff with Renee and Deanna. It's been an amazing event. And to my knowledge, and I know the sign of a great event is where there's not a lot of major hiccups, at least that we're aware of. And so I think the staff has done a great job. If there are some things that have happened, I'm not aware of them, but I think, and I haven't heard any comments from anyone else. So thank you again to all of you. I want to give you all a round of applause. So with that, just real quick, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis. I know he has a few final closing comments that he wants to make, and then we'll turn everybody loose.
Travis, Tom, thank you. As you know, the steering committee and the program leads here, you really brought us a long way. So I appreciate everything you and the steering committee have done. Carmen with the panels, Jim Downey's been an exceptional help from Right Away ROW12 and bringing that interest back. I'm looking forward to working with Travis and Tom on ROW14 as we move forward. Scott Fletcher is somewhere out there, and your team, all the folks that supported these last few days from the program and the steering committee, much appreciation. So let's hear it for them. Deanna and Renee, it can't be understated how much they've thrown in this and how hard they've worked to make this go. And they really have, and they've put a lot together. There's been a few things behind the scenes that Deanna has extinguished before anybody saw. And so we're always thankful for that and get going. I'd also like to thank all of our authors and the reviewers for making this all possible for us, to be able to pull this all together, getting the courage, some to cross oceans to come talk to us, get in front of new groups. We saw students, we saw professionals, we saw some great science, and it's really appreciative that they pulled that together and our reviewers put that together for us as well. Green button? I'll remind you, I'll go back to that quick. Point of housekeeping, if you are collecting CEUs and been keeping track of those, scan that code, it'll bring you to a JOT form, fill in that entire JOT form, the UAA will submit those on your behalf to ISA, we'll get those credits out for everybody and get that pushed together. These things don't happen without sponsors, and our diamond level sponsors, Travis representing Corteva, Tom representing Duke Energy, really appreciate everything that you've done for us. Our platinum sponsors in Asplin and Jacobs have been strong leaders in this space. Our gold sponsors in Davie and Townsend. Our silver sponsors in AI Dash, Bayer, CNUC, ECI, Mergent, NV5 Geospatial, Orion, and Overstory. Our conference app with Arbormetrics, I saw Bob out there somewhere. Appreciate that. Our bronze sponsors in Nelson Tree, Plank Road Forestry, and Right Tree Service. And our contributing sponsors and exhibitors. Really appreciate everything you've done for us and worked us through, getting us ready for what will soon be the next one. I put together a few words thinking back on the last week or so. You know, I learned Wasisi Nea things this week. Rue and Cassie shared with us the importance of friends, understanding other perspectives on resources, and managing relationships. I've heard the indigenous folk talk about, they think of their decisions and the impacts of those decisions for Wasisi Nea generations. Harry spoke to us about thinking the rights of way as our assets. He described a journey that will take us an entire generation to finish. And in order to get there, we will need to refurbish, rebuild, and create new infrastructure with technology that hasn't been invented yet or perfected. We talked about equity, life cycles that include economics and the environment, economics of the environment. We acknowledge that there is no free lunch. Every decision we make has an impact. We talked a lot of science, and it was good. Now we need to take what we learned and put it to work. It's our responsibility to take our knowledge back to our teams, back to our offices, and get this out to where it needs to be. We were reminded of the ineffectiveness of the Lorax yelling at the Onceler and how in the end it took a change in the behavior to really